Hi, this is your host Danny, and this is English Plus Podcast. Have you had a meeting recently? How did it go? Was it productive? Was it a waste of time? But first, what type of meeting was that? Was it a chat, brainstorming, a board meeting? And then, when you want to talk about meetings, what kind of words do we use with that? Do we cancel a meeting? Do we postpone a meeting? Do we fix a meeting? Do you want to learn about that? Do you want to learn about the types of meeting and all these things we just mentioned? So join us in this episode where we will talk about types of meeting in a new business English episode from English Plus Podcast. Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast, where you get to learn English, business, culture, literature, and a lot more. Two things to remember: that you will always find extra practice on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and don't forget to support us on Patreon to help us keep our content free forever. And now, this is your host, Danny, and let's enjoy a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Talking about meetings, we have a lot of things to say. How to run the meeting, to be the chair of the meeting, how to organize it, a lot of things. But we will focus today on types of meeting. We will start with verbs we can use with meetings, how to arrange a meeting, how to cancel a meeting, how to attend or miss a meeting, etc. What these verbs mean and how we use them in the context of meetings. And then we're going to talk about the different types of meetings that we can have at work. For example, we can have chat meetings, we can have department meetings, or we can have an AGM, an annual general meeting. We will talk about these different types of meetings. And finally, we will talk about a very simple thing, and that is our feedback after the meeting. How was the meeting? Was it productive, a waste of time? Were there good and useful discussions or not? We're going to talk about all that in today's episode. So without further ado, let's start our episode today by talking about some word combination with the word meeting. And here specifically, we're going to talk about useful verbs we can use with meeting. When you think about a meeting, what would you want to do with a meeting? You would want to organize a meeting, or to make the meeting earlier or later, or to decide not to have a meeting, or to be in charge of a meeting, to go to a meeting or not to go to a meeting. And all of these things are fine. Well, I just said all those verbs that we can use, but these are not the common verbs that people use when they want to talk about meetings. Let's start with the very first one. What about organize a meeting? What do we usually say? Can you say organize a meeting? Absolutely. Of course, you can use the verb organize by itself, but people use other verbs as well, and they use them very often. They say arrange a meeting, or set up a meeting, or fix a meeting. So we have arrange, set up, or fix, or obviously organize a meeting, and the meaning is to organize the meeting. Well, you must have a purpose, obviously, but here we're not going to focus on the purpose and what's good to have and what's not good to have. We're just talking about the types of meeting. Remember, in another episode, we will talk about how to hold an effective meeting, how to run an effective meeting, but not today. Today, we're just talking about different types of meeting. So we started with talking about organize a meeting. We can arrange, set up, or fix a meeting. What if you want to make the meeting earlier than originally decided? What if you want to do that? How do you say that? Do you say it just the way I said it? Well, I'm writing to you to tell you that I have to make the meeting earlier than originally decided. Well, that's a little bit too long and it doesn't sound professional. Is there another verb for that? Of course there is. You can simply say bring forward instead of saying make the meeting earlier than originally decided, which is the meaning of bring forward a meeting. So you can simply say bring forward a meeting to say that the meeting is going to be earlier. But what if you want to make the meeting later than originally planned? What do you say? Bring backward? No, obviously we don't have a word like that. Bring forward works for making the meeting earlier, but bring backward doesn't work for making the meeting later. For that, we can use put back, put off, or postpone. So you can put back a meeting, you can put off a meeting, or you can postpone a meeting. Now, all these three verbs have the same meaning: to make the meeting later than originally planned. What if you decide not to have the meeting at all? You want to cancel it, right? You can cancel a meeting, or there's another very common phrasal verb, and that is to call off. Call off a meeting. You can call off the meeting or cancel the meeting as well. And now, with that aside, the meeting is on, and you are in charge of the meeting. You will run the meeting or chair the meeting. So you can say run a meeting or chair a meeting. Both of these verbs mean the same thing, to be in charge of a meeting. And then for other people who are not running or chairing the meeting, they can attend the meeting or miss the meeting. So if you attend the meeting, you go to it. If you miss the meeting, you don't go to it. It's that simple. So let's have a quick recap here. If you want to organize a meeting, you can say arrange, set up, or fix a meeting. If you want to make the meeting earlier than originally decided, you can bring forward the meeting. Or if you want to make the meeting later than originally planned, you can put back, put off, or postpone the meeting. If you decide not to have the meeting at all, you can call off or cancel the meeting. If you are in charge of a meeting, you run the meeting or you chair the meeting. If you go to the meeting, you attend the meeting. If you don't go to the meeting, you miss a meeting. So these are the verbs, and these are very important to know if you want to describe what happens with a meeting. But now we talked about the verbs we can use to talk about a meeting. What about the different types of meeting that we have? Well, meetings can range from very informal to very formal. And I will start with the most informal kind of meeting, which some people don't even call a meeting, and that is the chat. It's an informal discussion with colleagues at the coffee machine, for example. That is a kind of meeting, and sometimes managers do that on purpose because they want to talk about something and they don't want this meeting to sound or feel formal. They want the employees to be themselves, to say what they want to say without being so much worried. And if you are a manager, you have to be clever about that because formal meetings are not always the answer. Maybe they are necessary at times, of course. I'm not saying that all your meetings are going to be chat meetings, but sometimes you might want to include this type of meeting just to help the employees feel a little bit more relaxed and to encourage them to talk. Because remember, there is something crucial about meetings. If people talk in meetings, that doesn't mean they always have a good idea. And if people don't talk in meetings, that doesn't mean that they don't have any ideas at all. Some people are just intimidated to talk in public, especially in a formal setting. So if you just make this setting a little bit informal, they might talk and they might have great ideas. You, as a manager, should seek those ideas out. Don't make it formal all the times. Just try to talk to those people who work with you or for you, doesn't matter. So that was our first type, chat. Informal discussion with colleagues at the coffee machine. And as I said, it might be with colleagues and sometimes can even be with your team. Not all the meetings have to be formal and you have to prepare for it and take minutes and etc. Some meetings can be just informal, like a chat. And now we have another type, and that is brainstorming. Now, brainstorming among colleagues where as many ideas are produced as possible, but are then evaluated later. And it's very important in brainstorming meetings not to judge the ideas no matter how stupid they might sound. Because that is brainstorming. You are allowed to come up with stupid ideas. And in my opinion, there are no stupid ideas. Now, stupid ideas, if at the end of the day, you still call them a stupid idea, but that stupid idea you come up with in a brainstorming session is a very good idea that you have now how you don't want to do something. Because it's not always just the good ideas. If you don't have bad ideas, you won't get to the good ones. Or you won't even see the good ones. Anyway, the brainstorming is meant to be a session where you can throw as many ideas as you can and then you evaluate them later and you never judge. And I have seen it many times. After the brainstorming session, even with strict instructions not to judge or make fun of any of the ideas in the meeting or during the meeting, some people tend to make fun of the ideas, or even worse, when managers do that after the meeting and they say that this person came up with this stupid idea. Maybe they don't say it like that, but they make this person feel this way. And guess what? This person is never going to give you any other ideas at all. And maybe, let's say for a moment that this idea was actually stupid. But we all have those stupid ideas at times. We're not that clever. We come up with stupid ideas, but we also come up with good ideas. And it doesn't mean that if we came up with just one stupid idea that we are stupid. No, we're not. We might come up with stupid ideas, but that doesn't matter. All it takes is one good idea, and that's enough. If you come up with just one good idea and 100 stupid ideas, it doesn't matter. The 100 stupid ideas don't count. This one good idea you come up with may change a lot of things at work, may solve a lot of problems, who knows? So never make fun of any of the ideas, especially in a brainstorming session. Never make fun of any of the ideas, no matter how stupid they might sound to you, because remember, this way you're blocking people from giving you ideas in the future, and you don't want that. Now, if you read a little bit about business history and the history of some of the biggest companies in the world, some of the brightest ideas out there that dramatically changed or solved a big problem in the company came from the most unexpected sources. So always encourage people to share their ideas, and to do that, the great place to do it is a brainstorming meeting or a brainstorming session, we can call them sometimes. Brainstorming sessions are good places to, as we said, throw as many ideas, produce as many ideas as possible without evaluating them. You just give the ideas. You write down all the ideas as quickly as possible, come up with as many ideas as possible, and then you evaluate them later and see which work and which don't. And now for the next type, and that is a project meeting or a team meeting. Well, that is a meeting of employees involved in a particular activity, especially when we talk about a project and you have milestones. You might have meetings just before or after the milestones. You might have a regular meeting, weekly meeting, sometimes maybe daily meeting. I don't know. Even I don't really believe in daily meetings because I guess that's just a waste of time. But if you are working on a project and you want to check the progress of this project, and not only the progress, this kind of meeting, some people just go ahead and think that it's a kind of a police meeting. A police-like investigation. Did you do that? Did you finish that? Why didn't you do that on time? Why didn't you finish that on time? I watched you the other day and I saw that you spent more than 5 minutes on your phone, and that led to, you know what I mean. You know, you don't want to be this detective. It's not a detective meeting. It's not an investigation. It's a project meeting. The first goal is to see that everything is working according to schedule, maybe ahead of schedule, and that's always good. But the important thing is to see if there are any problems you can even predict. You don't have to wait for the problem to happen. Those meetings are useful to be able to predict some problems and maybe work out some solutions before they even happen. And that's why they are very, very useful, project meeting or team meeting. But as I said, just the frequency of these meetings, it depends on the kind of project you're working on. It might be a daily thing, it might be a monthly thing. You decide based on your needs. And then we go to a bigger level, and that is a department meeting or departmental meeting. Well, that usually happens maybe once a month or once a quarter or maybe once a year. Who knows? Depends again on the type of work you do and the type of projects you run and the need. Because remember, don't ever, maybe I should have said that at the beginning of this episode, but it's a very important thing. Never hold a meeting. Never call for a meeting if there is no good reason to do that. If it is not necessary. People usually hate useless meetings. They hate routine meetings. They hate meetings they have to go just because they have to go to them and they get nothing out of these meetings. So, no matter what the meeting is about, don't hold a meeting if there's nothing new to say in this meeting, if everybody knows what you're going to tell them. And don't hold a meeting just to hold a meeting because you have a regular weekly meeting. Well, what if you don't need it this week? Just cancel it. Call it off. You can do that. Meetings are not set in stone. Some people believe that it's set in stone and it's important to keep control of the employees because if you don't meet with them every week, they will forget who you are. Well, it might work for some people. I might say maybe, but I kind of tend to believe that it never works with almost everybody because come on, people, it's the 21st century. Nobody is afraid of nobody anymore. I mean, even if you meet with a boss, yeah, gives a damn about the boss? Yeah, of course, you respect the boss. If you respect the boss, you would want to go to the meeting, not because you have to, but because you like the person. Whether a man or a woman, doesn't matter. But you like this person and you would really want to hear what they have to say. That's why you would want to go. But let's not digress and talk about other things that have to do with leadership and other stuff. Coming back to the types of meeting that we were talking about, we talked about the project meeting, and then if we want to make it a bigger meeting, it's a department meeting or a departmental meeting. Both are fine. And then we have two different types of meetings that happen all the time in companies, and that is meeting with suppliers, for example, to negotiate prices for an order, or meeting with a customer, and that is, for example, to discuss a contract. And this is just meeting with somebody. And of course, we're talking about business meetings. We're not just talking about any kind of meeting. Then let's go to the top, to the board. We have the board meeting, and that is an official, a very formal meeting, and that includes all the company's directors. The board of directors, they meet regularly, and sometimes when there's a problem, they also meet. But what do we call this meeting? That's the board meeting. And now let's go even bigger, at a larger scale, and that is the AGM, the Annual General Meeting. Well, the Annual General Meeting is a British English word. In American English, we say annual meeting. What does that mean? That is a meeting with shareholders, where shareholders discuss the company's annual report. That happens once a year. That has to happen actually once a year by law. And when this happens, shareholders have the right to discuss the company's annual report, whether they like things that the company is doing, they don't like things the company is doing, etc. And there's also, closely related to this AGM, the Extraordinary General Meeting, and that is a shareholders' meeting to discuss an important issue such as a proposed merger, for example. These are the types of meetings. Of course, there might be other types, but the general types that you might face every day at work: the chat, which is a very informal one, the brainstorming, project meetings, team meetings, departmental meetings, meeting with suppliers, customers, board meeting, the AGM, the big one, or the EGM, the Extraordinary General Meeting. And now we come to the very last point of our episode today, and that is, how was the meeting? How was the meeting? Well, people might ask. Maybe because they were not in the meeting, maybe because you were both in the meeting, or all of you are in the meeting and you're discussing the meeting afterwards. You might have some positive feedback on the meeting, you might have some negative feedback. Well, obviously, I can never talk about all the feedback because I don't know. I haven't been in the meeting with you. You will have to tell me why it was a good meeting or why it was a bad meeting. But I will talk about some common feedback people give after meetings. Well, let's start first with the positive side. People say it was a productive meeting. When you talk about a meeting and you say that this meeting was productive, that means you were able to achieve a lot of things and to solve many problems, or at least to suggest solutions for many problems. It was a fruitful meeting. So you can describe the meeting as a productive meeting. We achieved a lot. We figured out a lot of problems. That is a productive meeting. Or you can talk about the meeting and you can say that, well, I felt we had some very useful discussions. We covered a lot of ground. You had useful discussions and you covered a lot of ground. That is a very interesting expression that we use, especially with meeting. When you cover a lot of ground, that means you talked about a lot of things that you need to talk about. Of course, when you say we covered a lot of ground, you always mean that you are talking about things that are relevant. Not things that are off topic, right? Or off the point. No, you were talking about things on point and you covered a lot of ground. There were a lot of issues. We covered a lot of ground. We didn't leave many things untalked about. We talked about most of the things. That means simply we covered a lot of ground. You can also talk about the chair, especially if you have a good chair for the meeting, and you can say that the chair really kept things moving. She encouraged people to stick to the point by keeping things brief. Now, of course, a good chair should do that. It's very important to keep things moving. You don't want to digress. You don't want to go off topic and go for minutes or even hours sometimes just talking about something else that was not the point of the meeting in the first place. So keep things moving. You don't stop. You make the meeting as fast as possible to finish as fast as possible with a lot of achievement. That's when you cover a lot of ground. That's a very effective meeting. But keep things going and you encourage people to stick to the point. Please stick to the point. Don't go off point. Don't ramble. Don't wander off the point. That's very important. And that's the job of the chair, to be honest, because people tend to ramble and wander off the point. It happens. It happens a lot. It is the job of the chair to keep things moving and to encourage people, not to force them, but to encourage people to stick to the point, to remind them actually to stick to the point. Well, we talked about the good stuff. What about the bad stuff? What about when you don't have a good feeling about the meeting? Well, we said at the beginning that I thought the meeting was very productive, and that is a very good thing, of course. But what if it was the opposite? We didn't talk about it a lot. We didn't discuss the most pressing problems that we have at the moment. And even we talked about them, but then the manager went on and started talking about some personal achievements or some kind of philosophical, I'm not going to say the word for that, well, some philosophical things that we will never get, but the manager is so proud of just to show off. When this happens, most of the time, the manager is just holding the meeting to show off, just to tell you who's boss. That's the whole point of the meeting. There's no point in the meeting. He knows or she knows that you're doing what you're doing and you're going to figure out your problems on your own, but he or she is there to tell you, I'm the boss. Remember that. And of course, a little showing off doesn't hurt. Well, in this case, you can say that I think it was a waste of time. It was a waste of time. We just met for an hour or two and we didn't talk about much. We didn't solve any problems. We didn't learn anything we didn't already know. That is a waste of time. You can say that. Or you can talk about the point I was just mentioning earlier. You can say, for example, this person, maybe John, let's say. John was rambling and kept wandering off the point. He just uses meetings as a chance to show off. Maybe that is a problem. When John is just an attendant, that's not a big problem. But when John is the manager, that's a big problem. Or the chair, obviously, that's a big problem because this person is leading the meeting. And if this person is rambling, wandering off the point, just showing off, that's a problem. You have to listen to this person. He or she is the manager, and you can do nothing about that. You just have to listen to them, and that is a very bad meeting indeed. So here, when you want to talk about meetings, the meeting might have gone well, and you say that the meeting was productive, we had useful discussions, we covered a lot of ground, the chair kept things going, encouraged people to stick to the point. All of these are good things to talk about meetings or to describe meetings with. And the meeting can be bad as well. The meeting can be a waste of time. We talked and talked, but we achieved nothing. I didn't learn anything I didn't know about before, etc. And you can talk about certain people, or maybe more than one person, rambling, wandering off the point, and just using the meeting as a chance to show off, which is the case for a lot of people. They just want to show off and tell you who's boss, or maybe who's dominant in the team or something like that. Happens all the time. But the important thing is that we now have some idea about the different types of meeting, verbs we can use with meetings, and we have learned some expressions we can use to describe meetings after they happen, to say whether they were good meetings or bad meetings. Of course, there are a lot of other things that we would want to talk about meetings, and in other episodes we will do that, but not today. Today, that's everything I wanted to share with you. I hope you found the information I shared with you interesting. I hope you can use some of these ideas, maybe not only the language is useful, but maybe some of the ideas as well in your own meetings in the future. Now, with that being said, I will have to remind you that you can find a lot more on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. You can find the link in the description of this episode. There's a custom post for every single episode we create, and there's always more in the episode. So I highly encourage you to take the link, go to our website, and find out about the other things we provide with our episodes. Now, sometimes there are interactive activities. Sometimes there are just questions you can check your understanding with. Sometimes there are PDF downloadable worksheets. Of course, all depends on the topic we're talking about, but you will always find useful stuff on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. Take the link and take your English and knowledge with it to the next level. And now, before I leave you, let me say one more time that I have decided not to include any premium content in English Plus. All the content I'm going to create is going to be free and available for everybody. So I'm not going to include anything that you have to pay for. You don't have to pay for anything. But if you would like to support English Plus and you would like to help us with our mission, we'll definitely appreciate that, of course, because after all, we have some operation expenses that we need to cover. If you can help us with that, that would be great. You can go to Patreon. The link is also in the description, and you can support English Plus Podcast. That'll be a great help for us to keep all our content free forever. We don't want to change that. We don't even want to think about it. I'm sorry, I said that and I don't want to do it anymore because I really felt bad about creating content specifically for people who pay for it. and this content is not available for other people. I felt really bad about this. That is so against the mission of English Plus in the first place. I started this podcast with one idea in mind, is to provide quality education, not only English education, but other things, just like to share knowledge. I'm not saying that I know more than you guys. I'm pretty sure that most of you know a lot more than I do, but what I'm doing here is I'm just sharing knowledge with you. Whether it's about the English language or about some other things, I'm just sharing the knowledge. The mission of English Plus started with sharing quality knowledge with people from all around the world for free, and I don't want that to change. And I promise I will keep doing that as long as I can and even more. So don't worry about any premium content. There's not going to be any premium content. Everything that I create for English Plus is going to be free for everybody. But again, if you would like to support this mission, to support English Plus, you can take the link, go to Patreon and become a patron or a supporter of the show. Now, with that being said, this is your host, Danny. I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.